Each candidate will have a 3-minute initial statement and 1 minute for questions, and they will be timed. And if they're interrupted, it's because their time is up. We're going to begin with Timothy Cannon.
Thank you, Fran. Everybody hear me, or is this? Is that better? Thank you, Fran, and thanks to the League for putting this forum together to give us all a chance to tell you a little something about ourselves. I'm Judge Tim Cannon. You're currently your judge on the 11th District Court of Appeals. I'm in my 8th year of service there as a judge, and in my 4th year as the presiding and administrative judge. I'm married, live with my wife of 34 years, Lisa, and we have 2 grown children, one of whom is a firefighter and paramedic here in Ashtabula City. I have received in my time and my tenure as a judge many appointments and accolades from the Ohio Supreme Court. I've served as a visiting justice there on a couple of occasions. The Chief Justice put me in charge of a new case management committee to reformat the delivery of services from every court in the state of Ohio. I chaired that committee for 3 years. I've also been appointed to 5 other appellate districts to help out with their caseload. It's hard in 3 minutes to tell you everything we can about ourselves, but I would ask you to draw on a couple of things. Number one, 2 newspapers, 2 major newspapers in our district, it's a 5-county district, have endorsed in this race. Each of the newspapers has endorsed me and indicated I was a clear choice here. The bar associations in the 5 counties, 3 of them have conducted polls so far. And in 2 of those polls, the Portage County poll and the Lake County poll, I've been highly recommended by the bar associations. And in the Trumbull County poll, I was overwhelmingly preferred. Now, you may hear that you shouldn't believe what you read in the newspaper, and you should hear that we aren't here to please the attorneys, but I don't work to please the attorneys. I work hard, I know the law, I have a good judicial temperament. And the attorneys, in a secret ballot, I can't get back at anybody if they don't vote for me, have indicated that they prefer to have me stay on the bench. And that's important because they know us. We don't work directly with the public the way your local municipal courts do and common pleas courts. We work primarily with attorneys. And the newspapers, well, you know, the newspapers do extensive interviews with us. There's extensive questionnaires and a chance for us to interact with them and feed back and forth. It's just been an honor and a pleasure to serve you as your judge on the 11th District Court of Appeals. I would be proud to serve another term. I believe I've done a good job, and that's been verified by the Ohio Supreme Court and the attorneys who work with our court. They know best if I work hard, and if I know the law, if I have a good judicial temperament, and if my decisions are based on the facts and not any outside influences. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Tamburino.
Thank you, Fran. My name is Ron Tamburino. I'm a candidate for judge on the 11th District Court of Appeals. I'm married to my wife, Leanne. We've been married for 21 years. We have 6 children. We live on an operating farm in Trumbull Township, and I'd be honored if you make me the 2nd Court of Appeals judge on the 11th District from Ashtabula County. The first was Judge Malone several years ago. I'm an elected township trustee in Trumbull Township, serving my 3rd term, and my wife is the president of the Sheridan Theater. My wife and I operate several small businesses. I graduated from the University of Akron with degrees in fire science and technical education, and continued at the University of Akron, where I obtained my law degree. I've engaged in insurance fraud investigation businesses, primarily arson and business fraud. And I was in private practice in Stark County after I graduated from law school, doing a broad variety of cases, both civil and criminal, in state and federal courts. After 5 years in private practice, I joined the Sherwin-Williams Company's litigation section in their legal department, where I assumed positions of increasing responsibility over the next 26 years, the last 7 years of which I was in charge of all of the general litigation and appeals for the entire company. I had a practice of law that was national in scope. I've received national awards. I didn't belong to local bar associations, and I think it's important to recognize that the breadth of experience that I've received over my career well suits me to be a judge on the 11th District Court of Appeals, both the breadth and the depth of experience that I have. A company the size of Sherwin-Williams Company, you can imagine, has its own manufacturing facilities, its own trucking companies, and a myriad of other business functions that gave me the broadest experience. In fact, my qualifications are the broadest of any judge that's ever been elected to the 11th District Court of Appeals. I believe that the Court of Appeals is a court for the people, not a court for judges. I believe that there are shortcomings on the 11th District Court of Appeals. The website is woefully inadequate, one of the worst of the 12 districts in the state. The budget should be posted so you know what the expenses are that the court is incurring. They're spending your money after all. Management issues at the court include lagging and delayed justice. Justice delayed is justice denied. The court cases in the Court of Appeals are not being turned out timely enough. This 11th District Court of Appeals has a bad reputation among attorneys in the state, and I'm the person that you should elect to turn that around. Those are business issues, not legal issues. I know the law. My opponent has had 60% of his decisions that were reviewed by the Ohio Supreme Court reversed on appeal. He doesn't know the law. Thank you.
Thank you. First question. When making a decision, is there a specific procedure you use in weighing the evidence on the record? Mr. Cannon.
Could you repeat that?
When making a decision, is there a specific procedure you use in weighing the evidence on the record?
Well, the part of that question that's a little confusing is the part that talks about weighing the evidence. We typically don't weigh the evidence. We review the record that is prepared and controlled in the trial court. And our review of the case is typically confined to what's ever in that record. In the trial setting, there are a lot of determinations of fact that are made, questions of fact. Who had the red light? Whether or not somebody sustained serious physical harm. Those questions of fact are usually resolved by the jury or a judge if the case is tried before a judge. And we're typically confined by those findings of fact that are made at the trial court level. But the record that is before us is going to help us determine the cause. And the number of cases of mine that are reversed from the Supreme Court is incredibly inaccurate and misrepresented.
Mr. Tamburino.
Yes, in terms of the specific procedure, no, it depends on what kind of case it is. There are circumstances on direct actions where evidence has to be weighed in the first instance by the Court of Appeals. There are instances on appeal where the evidence has to be weighed because it's part of the appeal rather than an issue of error has been raised on appeal. In terms of a specific protocol, I don't think it's fair to say that there's a specific protocol because it depends on the nature of the case and the posture of the proceedings in the lower court. I'd also like to point out that I didn't specify a number of cases that my opponent has decided that have been reversed. I indicated that of all of the cases that he's decided that have been reviewed by the Supreme Court, 60% of them have been reversed by the Supreme Court. Thank you.
What is your feeling on merit selection of judges? Mr. Tamburino.
I believe that merit selection of judges is a good goal. Other states have moved to merit selection rather than voting for judges. The merit selection process, it would be a lot more vigorous and credible than local bar associations voting on secret ballots and for newspapers. How many people believe and respect everything you read in the newspaper? I don't see any hands. So, you know, it's bar association polls, newspaper endorsements. Merit selection would be a lot better. The problem is the merit selection process. Who do you involve? One of the groups that should definitely be involved are citizen representatives. And I believe that the Court of Appeals in the 11th District does a poor job of letting the public, who pays their salaries and pays their bills, know what's going on in the Court of Appeals. And if I'm elected, all of that information is going to be on the website immediately and forthwith. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon.
I think there's a lot of good aspects to a merit selection process. The merit selection process should be independent, first of all. It shouldn't be political in any way. And there should be a way to ferret out what good qualified candidates are. Short of a merit selection process, we should consider what many other states do, and that is a retention election. If a judge is on the bench and doing a good job, he can run on his record rather than having to campaign. And right now in Ohio, if you've got $50, you can get on, and you've been practicing law for 6 years, you can get on the ballot. And if you've got a name and a lot of yard signs, you could possibly get elected without ever having any experience with the court that you seek to serve on. I don't think that's a good, healthy situation. The bar associations do those polls and the newspaper do those things for the people. They want the people to know. Thanks.
Thank you. What collaboration efforts are made between the judges to make good decisions? Mr. Cannon.
Well, we sit as a group of three, a panel of three, to hear and decide each case. The three judges in our court are scheduled for cases well in advance. And one of those three judges is assigned to be the primary writer for each case. When the case is ready to be heard, research is done by our clerks. We have discussions with each other. We have an oral argument typically, and at the oral argument we ask questions and ferret out issues that we see in the case that may not have been addressed by the attorneys. When the case is concluded, we conference each case at the conclusion of the case to determine whether or not we are all in agreement with the way the case should be decided.
Thank you. Mr. Tamburino.
I don't disagree with anything relating to the procedure that Mr. Cannon just described. The only thing that I would add that I would strive to do differently is that when the three judges on the panel get together and debate the issues before oral argument, that if and to the extent they identify issues that the judges haven't raised in their briefs, that in fairness to the parties, not the attorneys, but in fairness to the parties, the judges should be contacted, and there's a procedural mechanism for doing that, to advise them that they have the right to submit a supplemental brief on some legal issue that's not presented in the briefs that are being reviewed. And again, that's something that I think needs to be done for the public and the parties in the case, not for the protection of the attorneys. The Court of Appeals has discretion to do that, and it's rarely exercised, and I think that's wrong.
Thank you. Candidates for 11th District Court of Appeals, 2915. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
My name is Judge Cynthia Rice. I've been your judge on the Court of Appeals for the past 12 years. During that time, I have authored over 1,000 opinions and decided over 3,000 appeals. I also have been assigned by the Ohio Supreme Court to sit on the Supreme Court, and I've been sent to the 2nd, the 7th, and the 9th District as a visiting judge. And by doing this, we've been able to reduce the Ohio Supreme Court's budget for visiting judges by over $200,000. We do that in addition to the work that we do on the 11th District Court of Appeals. I also sit on the Ohio Judicial Conference Executive Committee. I've done that for the past 4 years. The Judicial Conference Executive Committee is sort of the leadership of all the judges in the state of Ohio. I'm also the co-chair of the Criminal Law and Procedure Committee, and I sit on the Appellate Law and Procedure Committee and have been assigned by the Supreme Court to sit on the advisory panel for courthouse security. I've received the bar endorsements that have been made in this race. I've received the endorsement from the Portage County Bar Association as highly recommended. I received a preferred rating with the Trumbull County Bar Association, and also a highly recommended rating from the Lake County Bar Association with a 96% approval rating. These are significant that the Portage County and Lake County attorneys have rated me highly recommended. And the reason why is because before taking the bench, I did not practice law in Portage County or in Lake County. The lawyers there had never socialized with me. They didn't know me personally. They had never seen me try a case. They weren't aware of my work ethic or my professionalism. So their rating of me, a 96% approval rating, is a reflection on my performance as your judge for the past 12 years. I've also received the newspaper endorsements in this race. The Cleveland Plain Dealer recommended me and felt that I deserved the position of the Court of Appeals, and they commented that they felt I was already a very good judge. I don't need to learn the job. The Youngstown Vindicator also indicated that I was clearly the choice in this race. Before taking the bench, I was the Assistant United States Attorney in Youngstown. I tried federal crimes in Cleveland, Akron, and Youngstown federal courts. And before that, I was the first assistant criminal prosecutor in Trumbull County, trying capital murder, rape, and major drug offenders, any major felony that took place in Trumbull County. I have my undergraduate degree in business from Purdue University, and I graduated from the University of Akron Law School, where I met my husband of 27 years. We have 3 adult children. Our son is an architect in Cleveland, and our 2 girls are still in college at Miami of Ohio. I take my work seriously, and I promise you that I will work hard to render fair and impartial decisions, and decisions that are based upon the law and only the law. Thank you very much.
What qualities should a judge possess?
I think the important thing, the number one thing is the judge needs to have good judicial temperament. Because we see a lot of different people, different types of cases that come before us, and you need to be fair and impartial and keep an open mind and just be a kind, easygoing, reasonable person to keep an open mind and decide the case based upon what comes before you, not what your preconceived notions are or personal biases you may have. So I think that the temperament is one of the number one things, and a willingness to work hard.
What is your feeling on merit selection of judges?
I believe that it's important that we elect our judges, but I think that once a judge is elected, if they're performing, as Judge Cannon mentioned, the retention elections that some of the states have, for instance, they have it in Pennsylvania, a judge runs on their own record. So someone just doesn't file a petition and then not show up and not campaign and not really run an election, but I then, as a judge, have to run a full campaign. These campaigns cost a lot of money and they take a lot of time. And I think it's important for our judges to do the work that they've been elected to do instead of being distracted by having to spend their time campaigning. I do believe that there should be a way to remove bad judges, and that's what the retention does. If you have a bad judge, a judge who's not performing, a judge who's kind of gone off the rails and is a little wacky, they can be removed. So that's, the people still have a vote.
What collaboration efforts are made between the judges to make good decisions?
Every case we hear, Judge Cannon kind of laid out the procedure that we use. Before we take the bench, before we hear oral argument, we have already read the briefs of the parties and looked at the case law. And then we listen to what the attorneys say when they argue the case. We don't retry the case. We don't have witnesses or any of that in probably 99% of our cases. It's a review of what happened in the trial court. So we then discuss the case after we listen to the parties, after we listen to oral argument, and discuss the law and issues that we think need to be addressed when we write an opinion. So just working together is collaboration.
All right, thank you. Cynthia Westcott Rice.
Thank you so much for your time.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here, and I thank our host. My name is Willis Clay. I'm married for 50 years, very proud of my wife and 2 children I have. Campaigns take us to places we normally wouldn't go. It takes us out of their character that we normally have. And tonight I'm going to be out of both. A question was asked Casey the other night about Alec. he watered it down somewhat. I went online last night for 2 hours. ALEC is the American Legislative Exchange Council, I think is the last words. They are a group full of lobbyists that writes legislation for our legislatures to pass into law. 104 of those committeemen are Republicans. One is a Democrat. But they seem to pride themselves on the fact that this is a bipartisan group. Okay? I left some literature over on the desk for anybody to look at. Go online, choose the sidebars, look at it. Casey in his first year was a member of ALEC. The first year. He wasn't ready for prime time, so he needed support. So it is not a organization that looks out for the middle class, working class, or anybody else. It's an organization that looks out for corporate interest, period. He wants to champion himself as being a fighter for the middle class. He hasn't demonstrated that in the past. In his 2 years legislation, he passed or introduced 6 bills. 4 of them, I understand, were signed by the governor. Neither bill had any indication or anything at all that it was a bill that would help the middle class in any way, shape, or form. So he's not a person that's going to represent you as a middle class is what he wants to say. I think I've done enough damage, so 30 seconds. Thank you.
Mr. Kozlowski.
Thank you. First off, I do want to thank the League of Women Voters today for sponsoring this forum. Not too often do the folks of Ashtabula County get an opportunity to hear from the candidates, let alone see their faces before you see their name on the ballot. So I do appreciate the work the League of Women Voters is doing here today so that you can certainly learn more about the candidates. Again, my name is Casey Kozlowski. I am running for Ashtabula County Commissioner, seeking to replace Joe Morosky, who earlier this year announced that he would not be seeking re-election. Thank you. Most recently, I had the privilege of serving as the state representative representing the 99th House District, which included all of Ashtabula and northern Trumbull County. I certainly pride myself in the work that I did during my time in the legislature. I actually sponsored 7 pieces of legislation during my tenure, 4 of which were signed into law by the governor. And I pride myself in the fact that all of that legislation that I worked on during my time in the legislature was all generated from my constituency back here in Ashtabula and northern Trumbull County. And that's the same mentality and same mindset I hope to take to the Ashtabula County Commission. Too often you hear from candidates or office holders where their interests lie in Columbus or Washington, but you don't get to actually have somebody that's representing your local needs. And that's certainly something I pride myself in. In addition to serving as a state legislature, I served as the Board of Education member for the Pymatuning Valley School District and also a business manager for a local company here in Ashtabula County. I'm the son of a small business owner. My family have been primarily in small business their entire life, and I truly believe that is something that we could use to Ashtabula County's advantage. With the retirement of Joe Morosky on the County Commission, we will not have somebody with much private sector experience on the County Commission. And I certainly believe that is an attribute and certainly a positive that I can bring to the table. There are 3 primary reasons I'm running for Ashtabula County Commissioner. First and foremost, I believe that I'll provide a system of checks and balances to the Commission. We all recall the sales tax issue that came up a few years ago where there was an attempt to push forward with a sales tax increase without a vote of the people. I stand here today reaffirming that I will ensure that that issue remains decided by the people, and should that issue come up before the Commission, I will vote no, and the taxpayers of Ashtabula County will decide. Second, provide the system of checks and balances, raising questions when it's important that we need to. The partisan breakdown of the Commission are 2 Democrats, 1 Republican. Certainly hope that we can maintain that bipartisan county commission to ensure that all needs are represented. Also want to certainly focus on the economic development issue in Ashtabula County. Certainly believe I have a lot to bring to the table so that we can certainly move Ashtabula County forward. And finally, the drug crime issue, an issue I'm very passionate about and have met with folks, the sheriff to local candidates, and we've certainly discussed this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Kozlowski.
Thank you.
Stephen McClure.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and ATEC for hosting this forum. It warms my heart that so many people turned out tonight, because we've had some other forums that maybe not so many people came to, but they were still very informative. My name is Steve McClure, and I would like to be your next county commissioner. I said those words approximately 8 months ago to the first person that I went campaigning to, and I've enjoyed every step of the way. In fact, my wife Barb has been by my side the entire time, and we've had a great time meeting all the people in Ashtabula County. And this campaign has reaffirmed what I've always felt and known about the people of Ashtabula County. There's a rich heritage and a very strong work ethic, and I was just glad that that reaffirmed what I always believed. My family, as I said, my wife Barb and I, we've raised 3 children, so we do know the problems and struggles that everyday people, working class families, face, because we were young parents at one time. We have, like I said, we have 3 children. Our daughter Nicole lives in Medina and has graced us with 2 grandchildren. And as a matter of fact, about a month ago, my granddaughter Morgan and grandson Matthew went campaigning with my wife and my oldest daughter, and they became the 4th generation of a McClure to campaign in Ashtabula County for public office. My son Stephen attends Ashcraft Workshop, and my daughter Courtney, our daughter Courtney, attends Kent State in the nursing program. My experiences, I'm a graduate of our local branch of Kent State University. I've served over 12 years as an Ashtabula Township trustee. Prior to that, I served 6 years on the Ashtabula Area City School Board, and I'm currently the Director of Operations for the Ashtabula County Board of Developmental Disabilities. I previously worked for the Ohio Department of Transportation. I'm a member of the Ashtabula County Planning Commission, and I've been endorsed by the Ashtabula County AFL-CIO Labor Council, the United Food Commercial Workers Local 880, and the Ashtabula Township Firefighters Local 2710. My platform is simple. It's people, progress, and protection. My father was in government service for 35 years, and he always said this is a business about helping people. If you don't want to help people get out, well, I'm nowhere near ready to get out. I still have a passion for helping people, and I'm committed to doing that. And I am opposed to the sales tax without a vote of the people. That should be decided by the people. Progress, we need to attain what we have, retain what we have here, and try to attract new business. We have a very strong foundation to build upon with our tourism industry and retail. And protection, we have to eradicate ourselves of the drug problem. We have to incarcerate the criminals and also rehabilitate them, and educate our children on the dangers of drugs. I'm experienced, qualified, ready, and I won't let you down. Thank you.
There's a couple questions up here about the state making major budget cuts and that it's been filtered down to local governments. What is your opinion on this? How can we maintain our services such as sheriff department or our roads and stuff? They want to know what you think about the cuts that are made from the state being passed down to the local governments. Mr. Clay.
Well, naturally, it put a bind in all forms of government, even down to your issue 2. A lot of attention has been paid to the sheriff's department and the lack of jail space.
Take your microphone off.
See, a lot of attention is paid to the lack of jail space in the county. The judges have nowhere to put them. We do need to have expanded jail cell or space. The best way I know to do, and maybe not the best way I know to do, but we need to take the monies that's generated from housing state and federal prisoners, put that into the expansion of the jail, as well as grants from whatever sources they can come from. But the main problem, I believe, is in crime in the county is the poor economic conditions. The economy is a driver.
Thank you, Mr. Clay.
Excuse me, I didn't know.
Mr. Kozlowski.
Sure, I appreciate the question. We all remember the economic downturn this country faced, not but in 2008 through 2010, and we certainly faced many challenges. Not only we personally, our pocketbooks, our checkbooks certainly witnessed the tough times, and certainly government saw it as well. The state operating budget, it has increased steadily over the last several years, the state operating budget, and certainly here in Ashtabula County, they certainly have managed to keep afloat and continue moving forward. Certainly something I want to focus on is to ensure that we continue to move forward here in Ashtabula County. But I think we also need to remember that a core component to a comeback here in Ashtabula County is going to be addressing the economic development issue. We've certainly lost a lot of the industry here in Ashtabula County over the last several years, and if we have more people working in Ashtabula County, we have more businesses, we have more tax revenue into the community, we have more money going to the local economy, and we have certainly communities thriving as a whole. So that's certainly something I hope to focus on as an economic development issue so that we can address the finance issue at the county level.
Thank you. Mr. McClure.
Thank you. Well, that's an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. As a township trustee, we had several $100,000, approximately $600,000 stripped from our operating budget at the township, and Mr. Kozlowski was a part of the state legislature because he's claiming that he's balanced the budget without raising taxes. Part of the legislature that balanced the budget along with Governor Kasich that balanced the budget. Well, that's very easy to do if you strip millions of dollars from schools, townships, cities, and villages. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. So, like I said, I'm just glad that we were way ahead of the game by planning to, not planning to get that money cut, but we were very austere with our finances as a township and we were able to avoid this. But unfortunately, it's finally caught up to us. Our road department does have a levy on the ballot this year and is directly responsible because of the money that was cut from the state. That's why our levy's on the ballot. We had to do something, so the budget was balanced on the back of the taxpayers and local government.
Thank you. Do you favor or oppose the charter form of government that was on the ballot last year? Mr. Kozlowski.
I'm assuming they're referring to the Ashtabula County charter change, where there was a citizens group that stepped forward and attempted to make a change to the structuring of Ashtabula County's government. I supported a vote of the issue. I certainly believe that issue should have been decided by the voters of Ashtabula County, much like several other issues that I've talked about in my platform over the last several months. There are certain issues that have to remain with the voters, and it's an issue that must be decided by them. I don't believe such an issue should be decided on, certainly, by merely county commissioners, elected officials. I think that issue should certainly be decided by the voters of Ashtabula County. And I know that was decided ultimately with that language that was brought forward, that was defeated. But I certainly believe such issue should have been voted on by the voters of Ashtabula County.
Mr. McClure.
I oppose the charter change. I just believe that people need to elect their leaders in county, city, township, school board, whatever it may be. It's government for the people, by the people, and people talk about term limits. Well, term limits come around every 2 years, every 4 years, every 6 years for judges. So I was strongly opposed to the charter reform that was on the ballot. The city had one on several years ago. I was strongly opposed to that. To me, there's more politics with that than there is with the government we have now, because if you have 7 members on a board, which I think was the case with this, I don't remember all the numbers, but 4 people can control the entire county government. You wouldn't have checks and balances. They would have appointed the auditor. They would have appointed this office, that office. You lose control by doing what they wanted to do last year, the group that supported the charter. Thank you.
Mr. Clay.
I was in favor of the charter. Basically, my reasoning for that is I've seen for years that the two-party system now is working so far away from each other that there has to be a middle factor somewhere. They've got into the habit of thinking they have inherent right to always position these elected positions that we have. Somewhere they need to come into a realization that there's more people who don't vote, who once was party members of one or the other party, and they feel that they are not represented, and they don't have the trust in the party they once belonged to still be a member of that party. So yes, I was in favor of the charter. If it came up again, I would most likely be in favor of the charter again. Thank you.
Thank you. Got a couple questions. I'm going to kind of combine them just with the time constraints. What is in your opinion, is the most important issue, or what is the one single issue that would bring positive change to the county? And they want some specifics. Mr. McClure.
The single most important issue, well, I've said all through my campaign, unfortunately, jobs, of course, everybody wants to have a good paying job. I remember when I got out of high school, you could walk out of high school one day and get a job at one of the plants in Ashtabula Township or even in the city, because you had Reliance and various plants, and support your family. They paid a living wage. That's what we need to do. We need to work together to try to bring business here, or industry, or even the tourism industry that we have now, to jobs that pay a living wage that somebody can support their family on, man, woman, whatever it may be. And crime, of course, is out of control with the drug problem we have. Heroin is so cheap that we need to eradicate the county, but it's all over the country. I have a friend that lives 30 minutes from Disney World, but it's important to us because it's here. This is where we live. But in Florida, he lives 30 minutes from Disney World, and heroin is rampant down there too. But we need to take care of it here in this county. As I said, we need to rehabilitate the first-time offenders and incarcerate the criminals.
Mr. Clay.
I believe the economy is the strongest thing that we need to work on. The economy does and will reduce the crime rate, so attention can be on other departments and other revenue sources to go and do a little further. But the economy is definitely the overriding factor to improve here.
Mr. Kozlowski.
Thank you. I truly believe economic development, doing all that we can to make Ashtabula County a better place to do business. Certainly, issue number one, priority number one, something we certainly have to focus on. And I think in regards to this issue, I think it's important to remember, actually, when you look at somebody and they talk about this issue, look at the record. Look at the 12 years somebody served as a trustee. I looked at the record somebody served as a state legislator, and we've all seen the unfortunate downturn in Ashtabula Township over the last several years. And we've seen the loss of ESOP. We lost 131 jobs, $7 million in payroll. We saw that company move outside of Ashtabula County. We've seen the steady decline of the mall. We've seen countless factories close their doors. Where has the local leadership been addressing the economic development issue in Ashtabula Township? And I think when you do think about this issue, certainly compare records and look at how their past experience has been on this issue. And it's certainly something I want to focus on, and I believe I've got a lot to bring to the table to address this issue.
Thank you. We're going to wrap it up real quick. We've got a couple questions. They want to know, do you support the Metro Parks levy, and do you support the Senior Services levy? And we'll begin with Mr. Kozlowski. Just a yes or no, and on both of them.
I certainly see a great benefit with the Ashtabula County Metro Parks levy. As I just mentioned, the economic development issue is a very important issue, and with our parks, certainly seeing them grow their operations, having more folks coming into Ashtabula County as a result of the park system, having more funds to develop those parks, certainly is going to be a great benefit for Ashtabula County. I strongly encourage the voters of Ashtabula County to give strong consideration to that issue. I'm not going to tell you how to vote on that specific issue, because that is something you should decide on. I'm not going to say yes or no and be nitpicked for increasing taxes, opposing taxes, lowering taxes, what have you. So I encourage you to certainly do your research on that issue. In terms of the senior levy, I've seen firsthand the benefits of the senior levy. I've rode the buses where they delivered the home-delivered meals, and I saw how beneficial that senior levy has been for the people of Ashtabula County, and especially seniors. So I encourage you to give strong consideration to that as well. We have seen how beneficial it is for the people here in Ashtabula County.
Mr. McClure.
I support the senior levy. I think it does a lot of good for the seniors of our county. And the Metro Parks levy, I think, would be a great economic catalyst, another option for us to consider. I support both the levies. I won't talk around the issue. It is up to the voters, but I personally support both of them. I'm not going to waver.
Mr. Clay.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that I should support the seniors levy. It would be pretty hypocritical of me if I didn't. I am a person of nature. I love nature. I always will respect it. It provides us with all the things we need. And I'm for the Metro Parks levy.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. I never got a response from Mr. Law, so I'm assuming he's not going to attend. So we'll begin with Elaine Mastromotea.
That's right. Thank you very
Okay.
much. I am Elaine, I'm green, and I'm your neighbor. This year, 11% of Ohio's voters chose to register with the Democrat Party, and almost 18% registered with the Republicans, leaving over 70% who consider ourselves independent or third party. So why is it that only 2 parties control our entire electoral process? Where are the seats on the county boards of elections for independents? Where are the gerrymandered safe districts for independent and third-party candidates? The Republicans and Democrats in the Ohio legislature are too busy playing power games with citizens' rights and satisfying the wishes of their big money donors to care about ordinary Ohioans. They hold power not by virtue, but by manipulating the system. They've slowly chipped away at the rights of Ohioans, leaving them with no recourse to protect their communities or hold the criminal or the incompetent accountable. Every problem that faces Ohio today has been faced and fixed by someone else. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to look at the most successful efforts on the part of others in similar situations. We should have universal health care. Instead, we've got an incomprehensible, expensive, for-profit system of health insurance, not health care. We should have a thriving industrial hemp and cannabis industry that would benefit Ohioans all over the state. Instead, we perpetuate a disastrous war on drugs and incarcerate some 2.3 million Americans in a for-profit private prison industry. We should have fully and fairly funded education through college. Instead, we have a student loan crisis in this country that threatens the futures of our college graduates. We should have renewable energy that's environmentally safe. Other countries are making huge advances in eliminating the need for dirty fossil fuels. Yet I'm the only candidate here who objects to fracking and seeks to throw off the iron grip of the oil and gas industry. The technology is there. What's lacking is the will. And what removes the will to legislate for the people is the influence of money. So, while I hope my opponents are good men, I know their parties are corrupt. And by corrupt, I mean that they've allowed corporate money to fund their campaigns and corporate insiders to write legislation in their favor and to the detriment of the people. As we watch more of our rights get stripped away, whether it's home rule or voters' rights or female autonomy, we feel more and more helpless to do anything. So that's why I'm here, to speak for us and to let you know that if you want a representative that does not take corporate donations, who will not be corrupted by big money lobbyists, and who will legislate purely in the interests of the people of Ohio, then I'm the only one. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael O'Brien.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the organization of this event this evening. My name is Michael O'Brien. I'm a son of a fireman and the father of a Marine. I'm a graduate of Warren John F. Kennedy High School, a graduate of Youngstown State University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and a father of 3 children. My entire adult life has been dedicated to public service. I was a probation officer in juvenile court for 11 years in Trumbull County Family Court. I was elected to city council and served for 11 years in the city of Warren. I was elected county commissioner and served 11 years as a Trumbull County commissioner. And I was elected mayor of Warren and served 2 terms, 8 years. I've been honored to be elected, and I've been honored to be re-elected for 30 years. I feel with that legislative and administrative experience as a councilman and as a county commissioner, I can hit the ground running to serve the people of the 64th District as your voice in Columbus. During the times as I served as a county commissioner and mayor, we restored courthouses, constructed county jails, implemented the first 911 center in the history of Trumbull County. I worked with the Ashtabula County Commissioners in constructing the first Lake to River Greenway Trail connecting Ashtabula County and Trumbull County in Orwell. All during those times of working as an elected official, every year we balance our budgets, and especially in 2008 and 2009, during the worst recession since the Great Depression. As a result, I've been hired and rehired. Ask the Chamber of Commerce. I've been bestowed an honor as the only elected official in Mahoning Valley to be awarded by the Chamber of Commerce as the Public Official of the Year and Business Advocate of the Year. Ask the labor unions of the Mahoning Valley. I've been endorsed by every labor union in the Mahoning Valley. Ask both newspapers, the Tribune Chronicle and the Youngstown Vindicator. I've been endorsed by those newspapers, not only in this election, but for the past 30 years. As a state representative, I wish to restore, as the question was earlier, to restore the resources that were stripped by the loss of local government funds from the counties, the cities, and the townships over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, those funds are mainly used for safety forces, police and fire. My name is Michael O'Brien. I've been honored to be elected and re-elected, and I'd love to serve as your state representative in the 64th District. Thank you.
Thank you. The minimum wage in Ohio increases in January. Do you consider $8.10 an hour a living wage? Ms.
Mastro
Mateo.
Mateo. Elaine Mastro Mateo. No, I really don't. I would like to see $15 an hour. Two of our largest employers in this state, Walmart and McDonald's, can well afford it.
Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you. I agree with Ms. Mateo on the increase of the minimum wage. I agree with the fact that $8 an hour or $8.15 an hour is not a living wage. I'm not certain. I'm sure that'll during the sessions will be negotiated, but I'm not quite certain that I agree with the minimum wage at $15 an hour. But I'm sure that something less than 15 and obviously something more than 8. Thank you.
Thank you. What is your position on fracking and injection wells? Would you allow them in state parks and state forests? Mr. O'Brien.
I'm in favor of fracking. I am closely, and by the way, in fracking, I'm in favor of fracking under the obvious guidelines of the Department of Natural Resources and now EPA. I am also in favor of fracking with those same guidelines in state parks and in public grounds. However, regarding injection wells, I am not in favor of the institution of injection wells. I'm from Warren, and we've had some issues with the result of injection wells in causing some earth tremors. So I'm not in favor of the injection well industry as much as I am in favor of the fracking industry. And it's obviously both those are under the auspices of the Department of Natural Resources and the Ohio EPA, who are very excellent in their professionalism.
Ms. Mastro-Mateo.
I am opposed to injection wells for sure. I don't see why we should take other states' waste. It's going to stay toxic forever, and it's not going to stay where they put it. Concrete casings do degrade. It's a fact. The industry has polluted the area. They've been careless. There's not enough oversight. There's not enough staffing to watch this industry, which has so many accidents. Fracking itself contributes to global warming with methane emissions. It's very dangerous. It's not perfected. If it's that safe, let's track it. You can inject a dye into wells, and we can see exactly who's responsible when toxins permeate our water table and our groundwater and kill our cattle and our kids and our future.
How do you feel about the cuts in money to education? What can be done about the rising student debt for higher education? Ms. Mastro-Mateo.
I believe in the creation of a state bank. I think that the state could make low-cost loans available to students. They could encourage reasonable rates at college. We do need to take some of that money and put it in our schools. We need to invest in our schools. This is our future. These are our kids. This is our Ohio family. The proceeds from such a state bank would be reinvested in the school systems and in lending money to other students.
Mr. O'Brien.
I'm the father of 2 students that have enormous loans, one at Ohio State and one at Kent State. And I agree that the absurd rates and the absurd idea that your child, congratulations, I have a job, and the next day you receive your bill from your institution. We're looking at a $1 billion rainy day fund with no answers. Your fracking is your economic development throughout Ohio. There's funds available there. Somehow there could be a bank to decrease the interest or decrease the funds that our poor students who are trying to just get on their feet, trying to buy a house, trying to continue their adult lives, and faced with those enormous loans and debts that will carry on for 20 years.
Thank you. Have either of you, of the candidates for the 64th district, signed a no new tax pledge? Mr. O'Brien.
No, I have not signed a new tax pledge. And I will say something. When I ran for county commissioner in 1993, I said, if I'm elected, I'm going to raise your taxes. Because in Trumbull County, we didn't have a sales tax. I imposed a sales tax. With that sales tax, we restored the courthouse, built a county jail, built the 11th District Court of Appeals that those judges work in. We continued to construct a bike trail. We built a NeoCap building for low-level offenders. We brought cyber age of technology to our buildings. We did that and funded that for 15 years. And all those buildings were complete and constructed with the sales tax, what was equal to most of the counties in Ohio. So I did not sign a no tax pledge, and I think that, as County Commissioner McClure said before, right? You have taxes, you're a good steward of the taxes, you do what you're supposed to do as an elected official, and the people have the sense of enjoying that and enjoying the prosperous activities. And I am in favor of the Metro Parks levy and in favor of the senior citizen levy, even though I wasn't asked that question.
Well, so am I. And I'm not going to sign a no to new tax levy. I think that one of the major things that we have to do is gain revenue for our state programs in a sensible way and allocate resources properly. And acting like the best thing that we can do for people is to cut their taxes is just wrong. We owe each other a social safety net. We owe each other care and compassion. We owe each other respect. We owe the future. And we can't get some of the things that we owe it to ourselves to have by cutting taxes. So I think that gaining revenue is important. I'm not going to say that that's not my job. It is. It will be. To gain revenue in sensible ways and to allocate it properly for the best interest of the people of Ohio.
Thank you. Candidates for the 64th district, Elaine Master Mateo and Michael O'Brien. And we'll begin with Nancy McArthur.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy McArthur, and I want to thank ATEC for hosting this event and the League of Women Voters, and all of you for coming out. It's a wonderful thing to be involved in civic activities, and it's good to see all of you here tonight. I'll tell you a little bit about me, my bio. I live in the city of Chardon, where I've lived the past 18 years, and I'm also the vice mayor there. I've been on city council for 2 terms, where I've served in the legislative, finance, and audit committees, and I've chaired all of those committees as well. I think I basically sat on just about every committee that we have. In my tenure there, we have done a great deal to turn things around in our city. One of the first things that I did when I came onto City Council was to institute a performance audit, and we were able to identify about $500,000 of money in services that we were able to save taxes with that money. So those are being implemented now. Most of them have been implemented, and it's really created a great sense for our city that we're doing and managing things very well. In addition, just this year we were awarded a AAA rating through our S&P rating, and we have the distinction of being one of the top cities in the state of Ohio having that rating. Only 10% of the cities have that rating. In addition, we created a revitalization district by talking to some of the businesses in the area. They were able to expand their businesses, and we've had new businesses come in because of that legislation. So we've been able to work very closely together to get some great things done. My main reason for getting involved in local government was to bring in new businesses and to create a really strong tax base for our community. And we have been able to do that through some very great fiscal sound policies, reducing our regulations for our businesses, and also providing some great services for our residents there. In addition, I've been working in business for over 30 years myself. I'm a small business banker with Key Bank in Chardon, and I've worked in the finance area for a while, and I've also worked in marketing and human resources and a lot of other industries. I have a bachelor's degree from Cleveland State University in communications, and I minored in business. My husband's family owns a small business in Euclid, Ohio. They employ about 50 people, and it's a paint manufacturing company. We have 2 children, Kelly, who is a student at Ohio University. She's studying linguistics. She is married, and a son still at home, 16, and he is doing post-secondary work at Lakeland Community College. I mainly am focusing on trying to create the right environment for this district. The first thing that I suggest that we do is to clean up the crime and drug problem. And I have a 3-point plan to do that. First, by talking to, excuse me.
Thank you. Mr. Patterson.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm John Patterson, and I've served as your state representative for the last 2 years. And I was born in the district. I was raised in the district. In fact, the two women of my life are here. My wife of 31 years and my mother of 58 years, so you can do the math on that one. I married in the district. We raised our family here and retired from here. Just a little bit of what a smidgen of what I've been working on in the last 2 years. I believe that in addition to supporting the businesses we already have, that we have to sustain and encourage that which cannot be outsourced. And that would be tourism industry, in viticulture in particular, and our agricultural industry. Those cannot leave this district. And I think it's important that we develop that because we all know how many businesses and industries have left. So what have I done in the last 2 years to help that? Briefly, in the Conneaut area, was able to work diligently to restore staffing at the Travel Information Center to draw tourists into Conneaut, and that's critically important to their economy. In Ashtabula, I worked with various partners to get the Ashtabula River dredged so that we can bring in more outside dollars in the river because every boat that is launched brings in $72 of local revenue, critically important. In Geneva area, the Geneva on the lake, the corridor there this summer that was, and some of you tried to drive that perhaps, Lake Road that was reconstructed. I worked diligently with ODOT to make sure that there weren't transportation snafus because tourism is so important at Geneva on the lake, and we worked on that throughout the spring. In Geauga County, it's important to get the maple syrup bill passed so that we can have awareness of that industry. According to the maple producers, 80% of the raw sap that we produce is shipped out of the district. It actually goes to Vermont and it comes back and we buy it. I'd like to close those loopholes. Now recently, and another 2 things real quick. I founded the Education Funding Caucus amongst my colleagues. There's 21 members, 11 Democrats, 10 Republicans were having those difficult discussions about education funding, and the discussions have to come first before real legislation can follow. And secondly, recently the CAUV issue has bubbled up. I'm leading a task force to study that issue. We met for the third time just yesterday. If any of you are interested, we're going to be meeting again November 10th, 9 o'clock at the OSU Extension. This is critically important because it affects our agricultural industry terribly. Some of those individuals are going to see their taxes raised 300%. So there has to be some overall tax. We have to address the tax issue in the state of Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you. How would you address the issue of the water quality and algae blooms in Lake Erie? Ms. MacArthur.
How would I address it? Yeah, it was a problem this past year over in Toledo. You know, it's a problem that unfortunately should have been, you know, there should have been a little more foresight, I think, in some of the pollution that was causing that. You know, I don't know that it's totally preventable. I think that there are some things that could have been done to prevent it, and we need to learn from that experience and make sure that it doesn't continue to occur. I don't think it's a crisis, and I think that we need to keep a watch on our water and our clean water and do what we can to prevent that from happening in the future.
Mr. Patterson.
Thank you. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I am a member of the Great Lakes Caucus, which involves not only legislators from the United States but from Canada. Also, I'm a member of the Lake Erie Caucus. Very much concerned about water quality because it is an issue here. I'm a co-sponsor of a bill that would force our Ohio EPA to develop standards for microsite testing. Prior to August 14th, there was no such standard at all. And the water folks out in the Western Basin were using standards set forth by World Health Organization. We hadn't in Ohio, so I want to get that established first so we know what we're dealing with. Also, as a member of Ag Committee, we were able to pass SB 150, which begins to address the issue of agricultural runoff, and there were some problems. But my friends, the issue is deeper than that. There are municipal sewer systems that commingle stormwater drainage and sewer drainage, and when we have epic rains, those are commingled, and we have to fix the infrastructure.
Thank you. There's a movement on the horizon to integrate the adults and children now being served by the Board of Developmental Disabilities into public schools and the mainstream workforce. If such a proposal were to become law, it would bring the closure of Happy Hearts School and Ashcraft Industries. What is your position on this issue? Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, and I am aware of that issue, and I've been out to Happy Hearts recently, and we are working to schedule a phone interview with the officials, a phone conference with officials from the state of Ohio to get to the bottom of that issue. And I know there's petitions circulating concerning that to various state officials. I'm very concerned about that because I've supported Happy Hearts in this way. Those are special kids, and they come from special homes, and they need special opportunities. I've toured Happy Hearts, and some of the students I've known by being a resident here. They're so proud of what they do. We have to continue to afford them that opportunity because it brings worth to their life. All of us are looking for worth in our life, and I support what they've done out there for all these many years, and I'll continue to fight for them.
I've never been aware of the issue, but it sounds to me like it's probably a funding issue. Is that correct? That they're being integrated into the schools. You know, I think that special schools like that do need to be supported. I don't have any special solutions to bring you financing to these types of things, but I think that we need to make sure that everyone's getting the proper education that they need, and to be streaming some of these people into public classrooms probably doesn't do either of those groups a service. So if there's some way to increase the funding, I think it should be done, and I think that they probably deserve to keep that school open.
What is your position on fracking? Ms. McArthur?
It's actually called fracturing, I believe is the correct word. You know, I don't think that there's tons of fracking going on in this part of the country. There are serious fracking happening in other parts of Ohio, particularly down in Mahoning Valley. It's been done very safely in other parts of the world. And I haven't seen any real tremendous issues that haven't been dealt with. I think the state of Ohio is keeping a close watch on it. So I am not anti-fracking per se. I think that we need to have checks and balances, and I think it's being watched very carefully. So that's my position.
Mr. Patterson?
You've asked me a question. I want to ask all of you a question. How many of you walked here this evening? Yeah, kind of. I could have. My point is, we are dependent upon energy, and this has international overtones too. And we have been since 1948, but that's changed recently, importing more than we've exported oil. But that's changed, and in some ways, it has caused a negative drain on our economy. My point is, we have to balance appropriate energy development with appropriate environmental protection, especially in our district. And those of you from Conneaut, I know about the injection well up there. It's not on the drawing board now, but I'm working with other members of the Agricultural Committee to ensure, because we sit so close to the lake, that precious resource, that the injection wells are as safe as they can be. And if you're interested, I could get into that conversation in greater detail, but I can't because I'm out of time. Balance.
There was a question about the CAUV taxes and if legislation was going to be submitted to that. You had addressed it earlier, Mr. Patterson, but would you want to comment more on that?
Yes, just yesterday we had a teleconference with the chairman of the Ways and Means and a fellow representative who is working closely with Representative McLean to do just that. We had an in-depth discussion, and I think there were some of you who might have been at that meeting yesterday. It's a very complex issue. What really needs to happen in an ideal world is to freeze or to have a moratorium on the tax increase that's going to go into effect. And admittedly, I don't know if in lame duck session we'll be able to move that fast. In the long run, the CAU formula, which was instituted in the 1970s, worked then, but it is predicated upon a national economy. Those of you who are engaged in agriculture know we're dealing with an international economy now, and it's changed everything. One quick note here, Brazil is going to produce more soybeans this year than the United States. It changes everything, so we have to address it.
Ms. McArthur?
Yeah, you know, I found out about this right before one of our county fairs. Someone approached me from Ashtabula County, and it's come up in many conversations with farmers that I've spoken with. I think it is a very egregious increase in taxes. You know, if I'm elected, I'm going to go down there and try to stop it from happening at the levels that it is. It's not affordable. It's going to put people out of business, and it doesn't make sense. So I would be in favor of stopping it, freezing it, reducing it, all of the above.
Thank you. What would you say are the 3 most important books you have read to develop your legislative or legal bent? Ms. McArthur?
Books that I've read to develop my legislative or legal bent. Wow. Read a lot of the ORC. I don't know if that's, technically it is a published book. You know, I would say the Constitution of the United States, studied it well, and the Constitution of the state of Ohio.
Mr. Patterson?
That's an interesting question. I've read a lot of books, and I'm trying to zero in on a few that have made a difference. One is The 7 Essential Ingredients of a Successful Person. Stephen Covey wrote it a few years ago. It's about building team, and I think that's critically important. But in addition to that, Doris Kearns Goodwin is a favorite author of mine, and so is David McCulloch, historians who have brought to life In fact, I met Doris Kearns Goodwin this summer, and she spends time with her dead men, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. How many of you saw the Ken Burns special? Fascinating stuff. My point is, I'm reading 2 books on Theodore Roosevelt now, one by her, one by Edmund Morris, and there's a lot that we can take from literature and in trying to apply to our current times things that have done in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates for state representative, 99th District, Thank you. Now we'll begin with Marion Season.
Good evening. My name's Marianne Cezanne. I'm running for Common Pleas Judge. I'm the current Common Pleas Court Magistrate and Court Administrator. Can everyone hear me? Okay. I need to be louder. I've been a practicing attorney for over 15 years. I graduated from John Carroll with my bachelor's and my master's in education. I got my law degree from the Akron School of Law. A long time ago, I graduated from Geneva High School. I'm also a Leadership Ashtabula County graduate. I have over 100 hours of Judicial College credit and hundreds of hours of continuing legal education credit. I've worked my way up at the Court of Common Pleas for over 16 years. I have an understanding of the legal and administrative practices and procedures at the very court where I'm seeking to become judge. I review cases from the neutral court perspective, not as an advocate, but being fair and impartial. I've assisted the Common Pleas Court in making over 4,000 rulings on all dockets of the very court where I seek to become judge: civil, criminal, administrative, and domestic. My experience is well-rounded. I manage a $2 million Common Pleas budget, and I supervise 35 Common Pleas employees, again, at the very court where I seek to become judge. Qualities that I take pride in are hard work and strong work ethic, positive attitude, and real-world experience. I learned these qualities from working at my family's business, Eddie's Grill at Geneva-on-the-Lake, right here in Ashtabula County. My father's had it for 65 years. I'm proud of that experience, and it's truly made me who I am. I'm committed to Ashtabula County. As a lifelong resident of this county, I've served on over a dozen community boards and organizations, receiving awards for my community service from the Ashtabula Chamber of Commerce, the Young Professionals of Ashtabula County, the Ashtabula County Bar Association, and the Ohio State Bar Foundation. The boards that I've been involved in include past president of the Mental Health and Recovery Services Board, the Ashtabula County District Library Board of Trustees, the Kent State University Ashtabula Advisory Council, Leadership Ashtabula County Board of Directors. Based on the over 16 years of legal and administrative experience right at the very court that I'm running for judge at, my strong work ethic, both in the public and private sectors, and my community commitment, I'd appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Harold Specht. I am your Chief Assistant Prosecutor. I was born and raised in Northeast Ohio. I've called Jefferson and Ashtabula County my home since 2002. I proudly served my country as a United States Marine, and I am a Desert Shield, Desert Storm veteran. Upon leaving the Gulf and going back to North Carolina, enrolled in East Carolina University, where I began my undergraduate studies in political science. Once I was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps, came back to Ohio, finished my political science degree at Cleveland State, and went to school, law school at Cleveland Marshall College of Law. The same year that I began my law career at Cleveland Marshall College of Law, I began interning at the Ashtabula County Prosecutor's Office. After earning my Juris Doctor, I took the bar exam and was hired on full-time as assistant prosecutor at the County Prosecutor's Office. I'm a member of the Ashtabula County Bar Association, the Ohio State Bar Association, the Ohio Prosecuting Attorney Association, the Jefferson Rotary, the Jefferson Eagles Club, the Marine Corps League. While I was still in law school, I was fortunate enough to earn my legal intern license where I was able to practice law while working for the prosecutor's office on a limited basis, where I gained valuable trial and courtroom experience in the courtroom before I even graduated from law school. And by the time I graduated from law school, I'd already had more courtroom experience than the average 4th or 5th year attorney. Once I was sworn in as an attorney in Ohio, I started my career at the prosecutor's office, practicing law in Western, Eastern, and juvenile court, and sometimes in the felony division. Around 2002, I left the misdemeanor division and began my career in the felony division, trying low-level felonies and sometimes sitting second chair on higher level of felonies with more experienced attorneys. In 2008, I was honored to be named the Chief Assistant Prosecutor at the County Prosecutor's Office. Since that time, I have tried, the last 5 years, I've tried 6 major murder trials in front of a jury, getting positive results. I've also tried a variety of high-profile cases, including kidnapping, rape, burglary, robbery, felony, assault, aggravated vehicular homicide, organized crime, and domestic violence, and crimes against the elderly and the very young, just to name a few. As the chief, I supervise a staff of assistant prosecutors as well as a support staff. I analyze, prepare, and assign approximately 700 cases a year. Since I've become a chief assistant prosecutor, that's about 4,200 cases. I regularly present cases to the grand jury. I serve as the county prosecutor in his absence, and I'm the liaison to the other 87 county prosecutors' offices, as well as the FBI and DEA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a recommendation to resolve the overcrowding in our county jail? Ms. Cezanne.
Well, I can tell you that we need to work together with everyone that would be involved in making such a decision. But I had the opportunity to attend the Opiate Summit on Friday, last Friday. And there was a panel of different professionals that work within the criminal justice system. And I think it was their consensus that you can't jail your way out of this problem. We certainly need more rehabilitation services for those that cannot afford them. And that's something that I would also look into, whether it's drug addiction, mental health, those types of services.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
Actually, I think quite the opposite. I think we can't rehabilitate ourselves out of this problem we have in this county. We have a huge crime problem, and it's fueled by drugs. And we have many, many programs to help those who want to help themselves out of their drug addiction. And there's plenty of opportunity. Do I want to jail everybody? No. Do we need more jail space? Yes. When they're in the jail, they're not offended. We can help those, again, we can help those who want to help themselves by reaching out and rehabilitating themselves and kind of picking themselves up and dusting themselves off and helping themselves out.
Do you believe that prior judicial experience is critical for the position of common pleas judge? Mr. Speck.
Well, from my position, prior judicial experience, I don't have prior judicial experience, but what is key here is experience, and that's experience in the courtroom. As I said in my opening statement, I have over 15 years of courtroom experience. I've tried every serious felony case in this county since 2008, and some even before then. I started out in Eastern and Western County Court trying misdemeanor cases before I was even a licensed attorney in the state of Ohio with the help of another licensed attorney. Experience, courtroom experience. I'm a battle-tested, hard-nosed felony, major felony trial attorney, and that's what you need to be a common pleas court judge in this county.
Ms. Cezanne.
Yes, my experience is right at the very court where I seek to become judge. I've been reviewing cases, drafting opinions, working as a magistrate, and doing all of that from the neutral court perspective. And what we do is we take a look at both sides. We review the facts and we apply the law. We're not advocates, and my experience is working on the side of the court, not as an advocate. I'm not pro either side. I worked and assisted the court in making decisions and rulings in over 4,000 cases on all dockets that we have at the Common Pleas Court. So my experience is also well-rounded. But I do think that my train of thinking is in the neutral court perspective, which is what you would be doing as a judge.
Thank you. How many cases have you tried in court?
As I explained, my experience is within the court. So I've reviewed cases from beginning to end, from the initial filing of a complaint to a jury trial. But I've done that from the court side, and I've done that on all types of cases. And it's very interesting that we have only about 2.5% of the cases that are filed within the Court of Common Pleas that actually go to jury trial. And there's actually a new report that was put out, and it covers courts across the state of Ohio, and that number is decreasing, but is about 2.5% to 3%. Is the highest amount of jury trials that we have at our Common Pleas Court. And also, if you look at the statistics, Common Pleas Courts across Ohio. So it's certainly not like you see on TV. Most of the work is done on a desk like this, reviewing pleadings, drafting opinions. So that's my experience. Thank you.
Mr. Speck.
I can't give you a number of how many jury trials I've actually had, but like I said, since 2008, I've tried 6 major murder trials to a jury, to a verdict. The last one being on May 25th, or the last week of May. Prior to that, I've tried many felony cases. I've also been involved in the charging, the arraignments, the pre-trials, the suppression hearings, the expungement hearings, the grand jury presentations, everything you can think of from the charge to the jury trial and everything in between. That's my experience. I've been in the courtroom, and by the way, all of these trials and courtroom experience have taken place not only in front of the bench where I seek to become judge, but also in the other 2 Common Pleas Court judges or courtrooms, as well as Eastern, Western, and Juvenile Court.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates for Common Pleas Court. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight, and for those people watching on television. I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters and ATEC for hosting this event. I am Judge Tom Harris, and I've been judge of the Conneaut Municipal Court for over 25 years. I'm a candidate for the Court of Common Pleas, specifically the seat currently held by Judge Al Mackey, who is retiring. I was appointed judge of the Conneaut Municipal Court by the governor, and I was elected in 1989, 1995, 2001, 2007, and 2013. I'm a past president of the Association of Municipal and County Court Judges of Ohio. I'm a member of the Northern Ohio Judges Association and the American Judges Association. I'm a former member of the Executive Board of the Ohio Judicial Conference and a former chairman of the Criminal Law and Procedure Committee for the Ohio Judicial Conference. I've been an instructor for the Ohio Judicial College, and I've attended the National Judicial College. I've also served as a mentor for new judges. Prior to becoming a judge, I was the Chief Assistant County Prosecutor here in Ashtabula County, and I also maintained a private law practice. I've been involved in many community service organizations. I'm a past president of the Conneaut Rotary Club, and I've been involved in the Northeast Ohio Soapbox Derby, the Mighty and Port program, which I founded 26 years ago, is currently in existence, and I personally believe that candidates who want to serve their community should be leaders and actively participate in their community organizations. Like many government offices in our state, my court has had to reduce staff size over the last few years due to limited funds. And like many courts in our region, criminal caseloads have gone up while resources needed to deal with those problems have gone down. I'm pleased to report to all of you that my court and myself have been able to handle those increased burdens. There is more to being a judge than simply wearing a robe and sitting in a courtroom. You have to know how to fairly and impartially decide cases. You have to apply the law to the facts, You have to administer the court, the personnel, and utilize the limited resources available to the judicial branch in an effort to get the best possible result. I am the only candidate in my race who is a judge. I am the only one who has the responsibility to submit a budget and to properly operate a government office within that budget. I would like to point out that all 4 of our current county judges held elective public office prior to obtaining their current positions. This is very important because they had to learn how to accomplish their assigned task with limited resources. Remember, it costs less money to hire somebody who already knows how to do the job. After 25 years in office, I continue to enjoy being a judge. I would continue to enjoy serving you as your judge here in Ashtabula County, and I hope to have your support on November 4th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? You can see. It might be easy. Am I being timed right now? No. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, League of Women Voters. Thank you, ATEC, for inviting us here. My name is Ariana Tarragati, and I'm running for the bench that Judge Mackey is retiring from. I am a proud resident of this county. I live in Roaming Shores with my handsome son, Robert, who's 14 years old. I'm a proud graduate of Jefferson Area High School. I went to Kent State University, where I graduated with honors, and then I went to Cleveland Marshall College of Law, where I graduated with my Juris Doctorate degree. I've been an attorney for 26 years. I spent 17 of those years as a prosecutor. As a prosecutor, I handled rapes, murders, capital cases, child rapes, burglaries, robberies, drug cases, you name it, I've handled them. Cases that went to jury, and I had jury trials. As I said, I've been a prosecutor for 17 years. Most memorably, I prosecuted the Jeffrey Lundgren, or helped to prosecute the Jeffrey Lundgren cult murder cases with former Congressman Steve LaTourette. Jeffrey Lundgren, if you recall, ultimately received the death penalty. I was the chief assistant in this county for 8 years, the chief assistant in Ashtabula County. During that 8-year period, I worked with Tom Sartini, and we prosecuted cop killer Audrey Jones, who currently sits on death row for killing a beloved police officer in our community. I have also been an acting judge in the municipal court, where they handle primarily misdemeanors and traffic tickets. I have also argued before the 11th District Court of Appeals. I have argued before the Ohio Supreme Court. I have handled cases in federal district court, in the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals, and in front of the United States Supreme Court. I went into private practice in 2005, and I guess you'd now say that I'm a small business owner. I have my own law office in Jefferson, Ohio. In private practice, I have handled criminal matters, civil matters, appellate matters, and I'm also the guardian ad litem for hundreds of children in our community. When parents can't get along and they're fighting over custody in a divorce case or in a juvenile case, I act on behalf of that child and act in that child's best interest, and I make recommendations to the court. I make recommendations to the court of common pleas in a domestic case or to the juvenile court in a juvenile case. I've spent the last 26 years or so of my career in the Court of Common Pleas, practicing in the Court of Common Pleas. My opponent talks about not having somebody come and learn the job. I'm not going to have to learn the job. I've been in that court day in, day out. As a matter of fact, I have a trial tomorrow morning before Judge Vettel. That's how often I'm in the Court of Common Pleas.
Thank you. Do you have a recommendation to resolve the overcrowding in our county jail? Mr. Harris.
Well, Ashtabula County Prosecutor Nick Irochi convened a meeting of the lower trial court judges in this county to work on that problem. There's obviously 5 components to dealing with jail, and that's education, job training, substance abuse, and mental health counseling, supervision, and incarceration is one of the 5 options that are available to judges when sentencing. But we're dealing with that, but it all gets back to funding. And the funding, when the local revenue funds were cut by the state to the counties and the cities, that reduced the amount of money that they had to incarcerate, and it reduces the amount of money that we have to deal with that problem. And I would like to point out, because some people don't fully understand this, it costs money to build jails, but it costs a lot of money to operate jails. And you have to have people at the judicial level who can balance the limited funds that are available to the communities in order to deal with that problem.
Ms. Terwright,
Would you please repeat the question?
do you have a recommendation to resolve the overcrowding in our county jail?
Our jails are overcrowded, and part of the problem is that we have community-based sanctions now that the legislature decided back in 1996 that certain crimes, it was better to keep people locally punished rather than being sent to prisons, and that was because of prison overpopulation. So what our communities now must do are find varying steps for treatment. And my suggestion would be, and as a judge, you don't really participate in the actual decision-making in terms of how many people are going to be in the jail, that sort of thing. That's something that needs to be worked out with the court, or with the commissioners, with the sheriff, and with the budget.
Thank you. How many cases have you tried in court?
Jury trials, I've tried at least, I'd say between 50 and 100 jury trials. I'm not going to say an exact number because I, unfortunately, over the 26 years of my career, I've only paid attention to the number of cases that I've lost, and that's 3. But I never kept track of all the jury trials, all the bench trials. Again, in common pleas court, where I've actually been in front of a judge, I've tried very many cases in front of Judge Mackey, whose bench I am now seeking to hold.
Mr. Harris.
Well, you have to remember I'm also a judge, so I've tried a lot of cases, but I've tried civil and criminal jury trials. At the common pleas level, as a private lawyer and as the chief assistant prosecutor, I tried numerous jury trials. I did not keep count. I believe the most I tried in 1 year was 11 jury trials as an attorney. As a judge, I've disposed of over 86,000 cases. I can't give you a number because there's just so many that you tend to lose track of them once you get above 50,000. So I don't know. Sorry that I can't give you a better number than that, but there's a lot of cases.
Do you believe that prior judicial experience is critical for the position of a common pleas judge?
Are you asking me or?
Mr.
Okay. I personally think that it's very important to have an understanding of the limitations available to the court when running a court. So I would answer that question in the affirmative, because it's not, as I said earlier, simply putting on a robe and sitting in the courtroom. It's administering the court, utilizing limited resources to solve problems. And I would like to point out that, you know, I've had the experience as a chief assistant prosecutor. I've had the experience as a private practitioner. And as a municipal court judge, I've conducted civil and criminal jury trials. I've conducted and ruled on the admissibility of evidence. I administer the court and the court personnel and solve the problems with limited resources. I've ordered that offenders be incarcerated, placed on probation, ordered into mental health and substance abuse treatment, and I found defendants not competent to stand trial and not guilty by reason of insanity. And all of those duties are the same duties that are imposed upon a common pleas court judge.
Ms. Tergay.
I have judicial experience, as I indicated earlier. I have been acting judge in municipal court, which is the same level of court that my opponent has been sitting for the last, I believe, 25 years. My experience in the actual court where I want to be the judge, I believe, is critical. I have actually handled the types of cases that I as a judge would handle on a day in, day out basis. I am
I have tried a capital case. I would know how to make rulings on capital cases. Unfortunately, in this county, we have murders pretty much every few weeks. We've had quite a few capital cases this year, and I would be ready to handle a capital case if need be, because I've done it before.
Thank you. Candidates for Common Pleas Court, beginning 2015.
Yes. Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. My name is Christopher Altier, and I'm running for the probate juvenile judgeship. I am a native of Ashtabula, Ohio, the son of Dr. and Mrs. Samuel Altier. I graduated from the College of Worcester, where I received a Bachelor of Arts degree. I then went to the University of Akron and received my JD, the law degree. After that, I did some postgraduate work and received a master's in legal letters in estate planning at the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida. I am admitted to practice in all the courts in Ohio, as well as the United States Tax Court. For the last 25 years, I have been in private practice in Ashtabula, handling many cases heard in the probate juvenile court. I have also done extensive real estate work. I started the Ashtabula Land Title Agency, which is a real estate closing firm for residential as well as commercial transactions, and we've handled over 14,000 cases in the last 19 years. The probate juvenile court is much different than the general division of common pleas. Probate cases are generally adoptions, estate administration, guardianships, minor settlements, wrongful deaths, and trust administration. Juvenile court, which is also within probate court jurisdiction, they're combined here because our county is small, include abuse, neglect, custody, visitation, delinquency, and support, as well as some traffic tickets. During the last 25 years, I worked with Jobs and Family Services, as well as the Adult Protective Service, and helped coordinate and begin the volunteer guardianship program, which was critically needed in this county to advocate for the elderly. Through cooperation of various agencies, and without additional tax dollars, we were able to create and maintain that program. I've had extensive civic involvement from the Marine Museum, Finnish American Heritage Society, formed the Ashtabula Park District Foundation, and set up the Cynthia Nymarsh Township Park Trust. In addition, I've served on the Salvation Army Board and the Cancer Society. I believe it's imperative the successor to this judgeship have practical experience in handling cases which the probate juvenile court hears. And administratively, I have a successful private practice and title agency, which clearly shows I'm a self-starter and innovative. And I ask for your support in November. Thank you.
Well, good evening. I'm Albert Camp Police. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, ATEC, for hosting this event. I'm delighted to be here and to have this opportunity to share my qualifications and my ideas for the juvenile probate court. Now, I'm here to assert that the best experience for being a judge is, quite frankly, being a judge. Fundamentally, the juvenile probate court is a family court. So I feel it's important to note that I'm a married individual. My wife, Christy, and I have 3 daughters. We have a grandson. I'm the only candidate in this race that's actually raised children. I'm the only candidate who has actually worked in a children's home. I'm the only candidate who has actually been a foster parent. I'm the only candidate who has adopted a child. Additionally, my wife and I have guided 4 parents through extended illnesses and death in the past 4 years. So I'm the only candidate that can bring this degree of empathy and profound understanding of the workings of the juvenile probate court. I am the only candidate, as I referred to earlier, who is presently a judge, and this single qualification cannot be overstated. I've been the judge of our county's busiest court for 21 years. My annual caseload averages 10,000 cases a year. This caseload information is important since the juvenile probate court handles between 2,500 and 3,000 cases per year. And most importantly, 75% of that caseload is in the area of juvenile, the juvenile side, the juvenile division, which would involve behavior correction, not probate issues. I'm the only candidate who has actually worked in a courtroom every day for nearly 30 years. I've not diverted my career by starting a business. I've not taken my attention away from the courtroom. That is where I chose to work. I'm the only candidate who was a prosecutor. I've won local, state, and national awards for my service, dedication, and innovation in my court. I'm the only candidate who has prosecuted or presided in cases involving criminal child neglect, interference with custody, domestic violence, vandalism, sex crimes involving children, and I'm the only candidate who has 21 years' experience applying the standards that are applicable in cases involving the competency of individuals. I've spent nearly 30 years developing the expertise, the knowledge, and the professional relationships required to effectively address life's messy and too often very grave social problems. Most significantly, I've done it in an environment that has required me to resolve over 200,000 cases in 21 years. I'm the only candidate who brings this degree and level of experience to this job. Substance abuse is currently our county's #1 problem. I've spent nearly 3 decades studying and applying behavior correction methodologies. I have vast experience in treating substance abuse. I've lectured at every opiate summit that Ashtabula County has maintained, and I was invited to attend the state judicial summit on opiate addiction. I prepare public budgets, secure grants, implement cost-effective programming. I supervise magistrates, clerks, bailiffs, probation officers. The best experience, again, is being a judge, and on November 4, I ask that you make history with me and elect me to be the first judge who specialized in behavior correction, and elect me as the juvenile probate judge. Excuse me.
Please explain your civic experience. Example of boards you served on, concerns you have actively supported, and how you supported these. Mr. Altier.
Well, beginning back in the early 90s, I was on the Salvation Army Board and eventually became the head of that board. And we at that time, we were involved in several different programs, from fire rescue and obtaining a lot of the United Way funding, since many of the other agencies had left Ashtabula. The Ashtabula Historical Society was an umbrella group that was formed for cost savings, so that the Hubbard House, the Maritime Museum, as well as the Finnish American Heritage Society could function and maintain their 501c3 status with cost savings, not having to both have accountants. We would just have one accountant do everything. Currently, Cynthia Ninemarsh Hartsgrove Township Park Trust is an organization. We're going to be creating a park down in Hartsgrove Township with that.
Thank you. Mr. Camp, please.
This is an interesting question. As I sat here, I started connecting some dots as to my journey in being here tonight. And it occurred to me that I probably served 3 or 4, maybe 5 separate terms as a director on the Ashtabula County YMCA board. And in looking back, I guess my commitment to the youth of our county, to the families of our county, and to the problems that they face and the alternatives that they need to have available to them as young families and as young individuals probably started back when I became an attorney, and without even knowing it, this path has taken me to this spot. I'm currently on the YMCA board. I think I'm in my 2nd term. I believe next year I am termed out, so to speak, for probably the 3rd or 4th time that I've served on that board. I've served on the board of the Ashtabula County Speech, Hearing, and Rehabilitation Board as well. And again, the common theme, and I hadn't thought about it until just now, involves young people and the problems that young people have in dealing with handicaps of that nature. So those would be the 2 most relevant board experience and civic involvement that I would cite tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you aware of the Ashtabula Senior and Advocacy Protection Network and also the Volunteer Guardianship Program, and do you support these? Mr. Camp, please.
Yes, I am. And the Volunteer Guardianship Program actually has its roots back in the early 90s, I believe, probably before Mr. Altier became an attorney. I remember several friends of mine who were working for Children's Services at the time were very actively involved in that guardianship program. For those of you that aren't aware of what the program involves, it's essentially people within the community. Typically it draws from the social work community and Children's Services I alluded to. And they will volunteer their time to essentially oversee the welfare of a person who is identified as having needed a guardian. Those individuals will guide them through life's difficult decision-making processes, help them make financial decisions, and keep their interests protected. And I applaud the program. I would maintain the program if elected as the juvenile probate judge. Thank you.
Mr. Alter.
Yes, the adult or the volunteer guardianship program was basically a one-person operation, and that was Pat Sorahan at Catholic Service League. We did get involved. We created we got jobs in family service with the late Sandy Fletcher as well as Jack Howe, and the adult protection caseworkers of Alice Harper and Barbara Scott. We put that together. I was basically the court liaison, and it just showed how you can get agencies to work together for a common goal of creating an advocacy group to protect the senior citizens in this community.
Thank you. Do you have a recommendation to resolve the overcrowding in our county jail? Mr. Altier.
I think the root of our problem is illiteracy and lack of family, especially when it starts with the young kids. The kids are in the juvenile court and generally through children's services. And then there's a big gap, and until they get in trouble, they're not back in juvenile court. There needs to be some sort of bridge in this gap on maintaining contact with these kids and their development. And that also goes right to the issue of illiteracy. These kids need to have success in education to keep them away from drugs and crime, where inevitably they will turn. Thank you.
Mr. Kim, please.
Well, I'll focus my answer on things that, as a judge, I would have control over. First of all, there's two distinctions to this question. What has been discussed this evening relates to the adult population, those housed in the county jail. This question actually, as it would relate to this race, would relate to the Youth Detention Center and how that facility would be used. Now, I firmly believe that jail is not a solution. It is a tool. It is a tool which, if used appropriately, is very effective in creating crisis. And I think one of the things that is needed in the system is a close relationship between the action and the consequence. And the Youth Detention Center, being solely the juvenile probate judge's resource, would be under my sole control as judge. And basically what you do is you use the jail to get people's attention, to stimulate a reason for them to change their behavior. And then you provide structure, you provide a game plan, and a template, if you will, that is designed to help them rehabilitate or address the underlying problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates for common pleas court, probate juvenile. Thank you. Now we will do the candidates for, there is another candidate, Sarah Freeman, but we had no response from her. So we'll begin with Mr. Michael Charney.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Speak right into the mic. You may want to.
Okay, can you all hear me back there? Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm running because I think we need an experienced educator on the State Board of Education. And I spent 30 years in Ohio's classrooms, and I taught all different kinds of students. Students about to go to elite universities, students with disabilities, and students about to drop out of high school. And for my 4-year project in dropout prevention, Governor Voinovich awarded me the Ohio's Martin Luther King Humanitarian Award. 4 years later, I was awarded the National Teacher of the Year for my work both in the classroom and in organizing parents to have literacy-friendly homes and to be involved in leading school improvement efforts. But my real experience came when I gave, as a social studies teacher, when I gave the Ohio Proficiency Test and the Ohio Graduation Test. And what I learned from my students and from my fellow teachers is these high-stakes standardized tests distorts teaching and learning and denies children a well-rounded education, because what is test What is tested is what is taught. And it takes so much time. In fact, if you all take your eyes and look over there, you'll see that at ATEP, class is being delayed next week because so the students can take the OGT test. And superintendents told me in my listening sessions across District 7 that now 20 to 25 days are taken up with standardized testing. But there's even more about testing. When I went to Jefferson Elementary School to listen to the teachers there, they told me after 25 years, some of the teachers wanted to quit. They really couldn't because they felt that their classroom was being micromanaged and their students were becoming a test score rather than becoming a place to have deep personal and academic relationships. But my real sad time on the campaign trail was at Lakeside High School, where I met with the teachers and I said, what a brand new building. Isn't this a great facility and a great library where we were meeting? And this is what they said to me. Michael, we have a great library, but we can't afford a librarian. And what I found out is that 6 out of the 7 public school districts in Ashtabula can't afford a librarian because hundreds of thousands of dollars are taken away from their school budgets by online for-profit charter schools, and there's not a real brick-and-mortar school in Ashtabula County. $900,000 for Ashtabula, $500,000 for Jefferson. So when I'm elected, I will shine the light on online for-profit schools, charter schools, and reduce the reliance on high-stakes testing. I'm Michael Charney, and I'm looking forward to being elected to the State Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience with us tonight. My name is Sarah Fowler. I'm your current State Board of Education representative, and it has been a pleasure to bring a unique voice to the State Board of Education as a homeschool graduate, a small business owner for 13 years, and an former instructor of hands-on skills in both the United States and in Mexico. I have had the privilege to serve you on 3 committees. I'm currently the Vice Chair of the Operating Standards Committee, which is reviewing the regulations for all forms of education, public, private, religious, and public charter schools. Home education regulations also come under the purview of the State Board of Education, and I am the only board member that has had the opportunity to have experiences in all of those areas as far as connections with people, connecting with different groups, and bringing a unique perspective to the board. I support parents choosing the best education option for their children. I support local school boards making the decisions for the districts at a community level. At a state level, we need policies that are more broad, that are not pushing unfunded mandates down on local districts. I support that through a variety of ways. During my time on the board, I have voted against a number of resolutions, including the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System and Ohio Principal Evaluation System, OTES and OPES, because I believe teachers should be held accountable to the parents and superintendents and local school boards that are hiring them, not to a state bureaucracy through an untested test. I believe that we need to have local boards of education making decisions about curriculum. The state law specifically says that it is a local school board's authority to vet the curriculum that is used in their schools. But most school board members don't know that locally. And so I had the privilege of writing a resolution last November, which was passed with strong bipartisan support in a vote of 12-3, to place a disclaimer in prominent places on the State Board of Education's website to allow local board members and teachers and parents to go to the website and see very clearly what the law says about curriculum being a local jurisdiction. That's also another reason that I have concerns about the Common Core state standards. I am concerned that we are not allowing local districts to choose their standard as the state law says, because we have an assessment that was funded with $362 million of federal money to create that is directly aligned to a specific standard. And most districts, we had 1/3 of the districts in the state that did not adopt it until the assessment was coming into the picture. My name is Sarah Fowler. I feel that I can represent you well. I bring a fair, broad, and balanced perspective to the State Board of Education. Please visit my website, electsarahfowler.net.
Thank you. David Spencer.
My name is David Spencer. I'm running for the State Board of Education, District 7, which includes Portage County, Geauga County, Trumbull County, Ashtabula County, part of Lake County, and part of Summit County. And so if there's anyone here who's unable to vote for me, then please go to my website, Spencer for Ohio Schools, and like me on Facebook. I'll take that. There is also literature on a table back in the corner there that I'd appreciate it if you would take some of that on your way out. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event this evening, as well as ATEC and this fine facility. I'd like to share with you this evening just a brief quote from Cicero, who said, "What greater or better gift can we offer the Republic than to teach and instruct our youth?" And that's what we're all about as we think about education for our kids. And we want to provide the best possible education that we can to help them be a success in the world. And to do that, I'd like to just share with you some of my ABCs as I run for this position on the state board. I would, A, advocate for public schools. If I'm elected to the State Board of Education, advocating for public schools will be a priority for me. Part of my experience, I think, helps me to be able to do that effectively. I have a broad background as a public school teacher and as 17 years as a public school principal. And during that time, I served on a state-level board of directors for the Professional Association for Administrators, as president of our county association for administrators, and served on community boards and committees as well. Board of directors for an organization in Portage County called Coleman Professional Services, provides mental health and other services for individuals. Building character would be B. I was chagrined to read in the paper today in just one of our counties in District 7, the number of families impacted by the heroin epidemic has increased over the last 2 years. 2 years ago, the number of families that were broken up, children had to be placed out, was 115, and it is now up to 117. So I would advocate character education programs and implementing those into the schools. C, creating success. I would advocate programs for developing good curriculum, finding quality teachers, and of course, a good education and creating success takes a supportive community. So, my name is David Spencer. I'm running for a State Board of Education, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you propose to do to make charter school companies accountable for the public money they receive? Mr. Charney.
First, we must have both transparency and a level playing field, and we must publish how much profit they're making. Now they're hiding behind these guidelines to get in the way of that. I think that we also must publicize in every public school district how much money they're losing. I mentioned some of them, but in Conneaut it's $500,000. So I want to make sure we'll have an enraged citizenry that demands that public schools get not only their fair share, but that we begin to make sure that we have good charter schools for the original way of new curriculum, and not ones that are great at marketing, great at making profits, and real poor at educating their children, where only 35% of the students graduate. When the taxpayers know those facts, I don't think they'll withstand the level of pressure that all of us can put on both the state board and the lawmakers.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Thank you. First off, I want to be clear that the public charter schools are public schools. They are funded through the general budget. They do not receive local property tax money. That said, I have planned to bring forward a resolution at our next board meeting in November to suggest that we recommend to the legislature a change in the law which would allow the board sponsors, or the governing authority, to receive a specific amount of training regarding sunshine laws, public records, and the understanding of the duties that they have as a board member. And secondly, to allow the sponsors, which are nonprofit under the law, to withhold funding from the operators of the school if they are not meeting state laws and operating requirements. I think this would go a long ways toward helping address and circumvent the problem that we've been seeing in the papers over the last 6 months.
Mr. Spencer.
I think the problem with the charter schools is that they need to be closely monitored by the State Board of Education. Now, I realize the changes that we may want to advocate need to come from the legislature. However, the State Board does have a voice and can advocate and communicate that to the legislative representatives on the board. However, I would be one vote, and my job would be to reason and try to bring the other colleagues on the board on together to try to communicate this to the state legislature. Also, I'd advocate incremental funding for the charter schools based on their performance. And I think that would be very important. Also, the charter schools, nowhere in the literature are they referred to as public schools. The literature refers to them as independently operated, publicly funded schools. And they make that distinction between the charters and the public schools. Thank you.
Thank you. What are your opinions on Common Core standards for the Ohio school systems? Ms. Fowler.
Thank you. As stated in my opening comments, I have some concerns about the Common Core state standards due to the way that they were created and have been implemented, as well as the fact that there are members of the validation committee, the only mathematician on the board, Dr. James Milgram, and the English language arts professor, who created Massachusetts' outstanding standards for English language arts, who refused to sign off on the standards because they said they were not rigorous. We also have Mr. Milgram saying that these math standards were going to put us 2 to 3 years behind every high-achieving country. And I'm concerned that if these are really to be a more rigorous standard, that we should have tested them first. I did testify before the legislature in favor of repealing the Common Core at a state level. I support districts being able to choose whether or not they feel that this is a district or a standard that improves their district, and to be able to choose that at a local level without the state, in essence, mandating it through use of state assessments that are directly tied to the standard. Thank you.
Mr. Spencer.
Well, part of the reason the standards in math and English language arts came about was because all the different states had different standards. And students were coming to colleges and universities, and many of them having to take remedial courses because they didn't happen to take the subject areas in the right sequence, and so there was no uniformity to it. And so this is an attempt to bring about some systematic way of having standards for all our students. Also, sometimes the criticisms of the standards, people mistake quantity for quality. It was discovered that many places were trying to cover way too much material, being mile wide and 1/8 of an inch deep. And the intent of the standards is to be rigorous and challenging and to narrow the scope and go deeper into the various subject areas. And so those are some of the concerns regarding the standards. Over 42 states have adopted them.
Mr. Charney.
I think it's important that we have high academic standards so kids won't get a watered-down curriculum. But I have some concerns about these Common Core standards. First, in New York State, only 30% of the students pass the Common Core exams and only 15% of children of color. Now that would mean we should do a lot more with smaller classes, all-day kindergarten, preschool, and personal attention, but I'm worried that this legislature won't want to put the funds into helping these kids. Second, I think that some of the standards for the little kids might not be what we call in education developmentally appropriate. In other words, kindergarten kids can't really handle some of the things they're asked to do. But I'm also worried that with a national test, that multinational corporations will see this as a new market. And a company like Pearson will be making millions and millions of dollars rather than having local-based educators developing these kinds of assessments.
Thank you. Do you believe that charter schools should be held to the same testing standards as public schools? Mr. Spencer.
Yes, I would not object to that at all. But I believe right now the testing needs to be pulled dramatically back in the public schools. If you were to look at the testing schedule, there's 36 weeks in the school year. 29 of those weeks are impacted by testing with one group or another. The greater concern is not only does this induce stress level in many students, but also it robs the students of instructional time. And so we need to take a serious look at this. And one of the problems with the debate on Common Core standards is there's more acrimony than there is analysis. And we need to have the discussion focus on these kinds of things, the testing. Thank you.
Mr. Charney.
Yes, I think there should be a level playing field in all aspects of state regulations for charter schools, including testing. But the problem isn't whether charter school kids take the test. The problem is there's so much testing that it pushes out creative thinking, field trips, and it also pushes out an emphasis on subjects that aren't tested. I was in a elementary school just last week, and the 5th grade teacher told me that the kids don't know any science because they're only being tested in reading and math before they enter 5th grade. Too often then, when we have this high stakes test, kids become little robots where all they can do is learn how to take a test rather than becoming creative thinkers and really reaching their potential. So we could destroy charters and public education with so much testing, but we ought to revisit this whole idea of high-stakes testing because it really doesn't help kids, doesn't help teachers, and it doesn't help parents.
Thank you. You know, there's a quote I really like by Jeannie I forget her last name, but I saw it on Facebook, and it said, if the purpose for learning is to do well on a test, we've lost sight of the real purpose for learning. And I think that we might all agree on that particular issue. That said, currently, under Ohio law, public charter school students are required to take all state assessments with the exception of dropout recovery schools. And they are required to have state certified teachers. They're required to meet state standards. They're required to to meet health and safety standards. Public charter schools are required to meet specific curriculum requirements, not mandated curriculum, but the same as you have in your traditional public schools and your home education environments where there are specific course requirements in science, in English language arts, in math, in history, and that's an across-the-board requirement. So to clarify, I also agree that we need to reevaluate the testing, and I am working with the Department of Education to that end right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Do special needs children's programs affect our schools' budgets? Mr. Charney.
Totally. In other words, not only with the federal regulations, but it costs a lot more to give these kids personal attention. You can't, not only if they're going to be in mainstream classes, you need a paraprofessional to help them out, But then if they're not going to be in the mainstream classes, they're going to need sometimes only 5 students in a class, maybe 10 or 15. So unless teachers are going to work for free, it's going to cost a lot more money to have more teachers, more paraprofessionals, and also more work to create the IEPs, the individual education plans. So that's one thing that I think a lot of the public doesn't understand in the last 30 years with the new federal regulations, that to educate all children, we can't say, forget those special ed kids, we can't spend the money, and that's why I think there's been an increase in school spending over 30 years to help out those children who really need that help.
Ms. Fowler?
Yes, I would agree that there is a definite impact on a school's budget from special needs students. That said, the state budget does include special set-asides for students requiring special needs attention, but the federal government has required through the IDEA law that students must be served until they are 21 going on 22, and so at the present time there's not any choice in the matter. They are included in the public school, they're included in the classroom, and I think that it's very beneficial for many of those students for the care that they're receiving, but it is definitely something that the state budget can help with, and there are some funds that are set aside by the legislature to help districts with that.
Mr. Spencer?
Well, it does affect the budget, and I think it is money well spent. One of the greatest privileges I had as a principal was to have one of my students who is visually impaired win a statewide essay contest in the 8th grade, and to read that essay in Braille before a group of people gathered at the honors banquet. And the essay was dealing with how to cope with life's difficult circumstances. And so when we talk about people with disabilities, I think it's commendable that a nation like the United States of America would have a law on its books insisting that every single child who has a disability from age 3 through age 22 receives a free and appropriate public education.
Thank you. What is the role of a state board of education member? Do you believe in advocating for public schools as is the priority? Ms. Fowler?
Yes, well, the State Board of Education has 2 primary roles. It is quasi-legislative, which means that the roles that the laws that the legislature passes regarding education come before the board, and we make policy or regulations or select tests or whatever the circumstance may require. When I joined the board, we had one bill that required over 90 things for us to do in 6 months. That was quite intimidating. We also have a quasi-judicial role, which basically is licensure. We perform evaluations on those who are applying for licensure, and we also provide discipline for those who are abusing their licensure for personal gain. And I would say we also have a 3rd role, and that is we can make recommendations to the legislature regarding changes in the law that we expect or would like to see. And I believe that we should advocate for all forms of education that are legal in the state.
Mr. Spencer?
Well, would you repeat the question, please?
What is the role of a state board of education member, and do you believe advocating for public schools is the priority?
I think the role is developing policy, and as well as overseeing the Department of Education and issuing licenses, hiring the state superintendent of instruction. Those are among the duties of the State Board of Education and each member on the board. Advocating for public schools is I would say, a major role. It's a function of each board member. However, the board is also charged with overseeing the monitoring of charter schools. And so I'm just wondering, over the last few years, what was happening while in charter schools we had these various abuses, manipulating data, statistics, unlicensed teachers being brought in from overseas, and other abuses happening in the charter schools. So I think there needs to be closer supervision by the board over the State Department of Education.
Education for 6 years. And what I learned from her, that what a state board member can and should do is organize the voice of citizens, to put pressure on the legislature, to be able to hear what actually goes on in Ohio's classrooms. And I'll be going throughout District 7 to speak with parents, to have teachers raise their voice, to have students describe the reality of what it means to be in Ohio's classrooms. Because we must push back against the injurious policies around testing, around profiteering, around privatization that have characterized the last 6 or 7 years, 4 years in Columbus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Candace, the State School Board. Thank you.
Hello, I'm the Libertarian candidate for Congress. I promise that I will never vote to raise your taxes if I'm elected. I will never vote for new taxes. I will do all I can to end the invisible inflation tax. I promise you that I will support the Constitution of the United States 100% of the time. And I will always work to restore liberty, justice, and peace. And finally, I would promise that I will work to impeach Barack Obama for war crimes, treason, murder, and attempts to destroy the Constitution of the United States and set up a dictatorship. We face many problems in this country which have been exacerbated by both of the establishment parties for many, many years. For one thing, we need to get out of the Depression. I favor the Liberty Amendment to the Constitution, which would require the federal government to sell all of its properties which are held unconstitutionally, so that in 3 years we could repeal the federal income tax, the gift tax, and the death tax, and give the average American worker a 20% pay increase. For you folks who are leaving, I haven't put out my literature yet, and if you must rush away, my website is macoforliberty.org. We also need to end the police state. I want to abolish the Department of Homeland Security. I want to get rid of the NSA, the TSA. We used to say that the government should listen to the American people, and I've changed my viewpoint on that somewhat. The government should listen to us when we want it to listen to us, not when it wants to spy on all of us. We need to get rid of the FBI and the CIA. We need to end the drug war. We need to restore the right to keep and bear arms. If there really are terrorists coming to the United States to get us, the American people should be armed and able to defend themselves. Finally, we should stop World War III. I favor bringing all of our troops home now. I favor ending all foreign aid. It's unconstitutional, it creates more enemies, and we're almost $18 trillion broke. We should bring our troops home. If necessary, we should put enough on the southern border to defend it against the invasion. Another reason to impeach Obama. If necessary, we should build a wall. I favor the reinstatement of President Eisenhower's program, Operation Wetback, which successfully returned 2 million illegal aliens home without violating the God-given constitutionally guaranteed rights of the American people. Again, we must do all of these things to restore liberty, justice, and peace. The establishment party candidates will not do them. I will. I also promise to support the legislators of the state of Ohio in nullifying all unconstitutional federal laws, including Common Core. Thank you.
Mr. Mackel, would you have voted to impeach George Bush for invading Iraq?
Absolutely. He's a war criminal too. I favor bipartisan impeachment.
Are there any other questions?
Only one. The other folks got 5 or 6. I've been able to answer every question I've been asked during the campaign, except one at the City Club, and if you want to see that, go to City Club, go to YouTube, City Club 2014 Mako. The question I was asked then was, what would I do to improve Obamacare? And I said, I told the moderator I couldn't answer that. Trying to improve Obamacare is like trying to improve Ebola. You don't improve Ebola, you kill Ebola. You don't improve Obamacare, you kill Obamacare.
Thank you, Mr. Mackel. I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate you keeping the longest way. Thanks for being so patient. Thank you.